Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Scream Bloody Podcast. My name is Will Feiner, and with me are John Woody Corsini and Mitch Pegg. This is the first episode of our new podcast, and we'll be talking about pretty much all things metal, bands, shows, albums, you name it. Our co-host, John Woody Corsini, he's in the band Split the Abyss, and he also runs a online radio show. So, with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself and talk about who he is.
Hey there, folks. John Corsini here. You can call me Woody. I'm the drummer and co-founder of a Cincinnati thrash metal band called Split the Abyss, and I also co-host a show on a local radio station, WAFI 88.3 FM, The Metal Connection. I also really enjoy being most of something of a figure here in the local metal scene, and the avid collector pretty much of a lot of albums and whatnot. And I'm happy to hear and share a lot of stuff with you folks.
Thanks, Woody. And who else do we have with us?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mitch Pegg, and I've been in the music scene in Cincinnati for a while. Played in a band that was originally Gomorrah. We became Lucis Absentia, played out with Woody's band Split the Abyss quite a few times, actually, and put out an EP and an album. And then I moved away and became a papa, had a couple kiddos. So just kind of been doing the dad thing, not really playing as much music, but there's still stuff in the pipeline for Lucis down the road. We're not really that active right now. And aside from that, Will asked me to join this, talk about metal, which I love, and all things metal related. So I'm just along for the ride to chat it up about releases and upcoming bands and old bands and everything in between. So just glad to be a part of it.
It's really cool to have both you guys on the podcast. I'm pretty excited. Both of you are individuals that came to mind pretty much immediately, and I think that you both have some really good insight and also, kind of varying tastes and whatnot. And it's going to be really fun breaking down bands and albums and just talking about metal with you guys from your own perspectives. Woody, your band has actually been making some waves lately. Why don't you tell us about the recent album release?
Oh, just January of this year, we finally dropped our third full-length album, These Terrible Depths. It's been getting a pretty good reception. I'm extremely happy about that. It's probably some of the best material we've written so far, and I'm really looking forward to getting out and playing these tracks for people. And I think hopefully for the end of this year, or at least at the latest sometime next year, we'll start working on our next full length.
I know that this album, personally, for me, signified a step forward for Split the Abyss, both in terms of songwriting and recording quality. Would you care to comment on that?
I wish I could say that a lot of there was a premeditation to it and we had a plan going into it, but honestly, it was a bit of a hectic process for us. I initially tracked my drums, then I had to wait a while to figure out Max, as you know, now lives out in California and Los Angeles. So I did my stuff. Max did his stuff out there. Matt did his bass stuff, and then it was a then it was a matter of some things need to be edited, and the editing process, I'll admit, went longer than I think it that we wanted it to go. But at the end, we finally got the final product. Then it was a matter of finding a distributor to be able to you know get physical copies of the record, and then it finally able to get it out this year. And the end result of everything, Dave Vole mixed and master the thing. We had a few other individuals involved with like recording vocals and editing. And I can't say that like I said, I can't say everything was premeditated. Somehow it just came out the way it did by as a matter of circumstance, and I'm grateful it sounded as good as it did.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that the work speaks for itself, and sometimes some of the, I'm sure many great albums are, people and bands have their recording processes very honed in, and they go in with a plan and they execute it. But some of the best albums probably were written, and bands would even admit to you, that they're written or, produced, at the last minute, and, things even change in the process of recording songs. So, I thought it was a lot of, you could tell that there was, hard work put into it. And I'm very proud of you guys. It's been making waves locally and, outside of the tri-state area even, so that's really encouraging. Always good to see Cincinnati bands making waves like that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Now, Mitch's band, Lucis Absentia, put out a full length, would be a few years back now. Mitch, do you want to tell us anything go into a little bit more detail about the last release or your contributions to it?
Sure, yeah. For anybody that hasn't checked it out, I suppose that would have been 2018, and the album's Gehenna Gate, and yeah, that thing took us. I mean, if we're going to talk timeline, as Gomorrah, we put out To the Depths in 20. Wow, officially 14, I think, and then we changed our name to Lucis, and we started writing the new stuff in like 2014, 2015. So it felt like forever. And in hindsight, I guess it really wasn't that long, but we were playing all those local shows out all the time, and we were already playing the songs the whole time while we were writing them. So from 2014 to 2018, we kept like introducing more new songs and new songs. Our mission was to kind of put out a really long record. I think it's like almost 70 minutes maybe. So, and then we look back too and we're like, man, maybe that's too long. But yeah, it ended up coming out 2018. We finally got it released. And that kind of coincided right with me moving out of the state for work to support the family. Yeah, we moved back, but then it's COVID and all the other fun stuff. So not really a lot going on as far as collaboration.
Speaking of albums that took a while to come out.
Yeah. Yeah, it took like 4 years or something. I guess 4 or 5 years. But yeah, and I guess as far as performance and playing guitar, that's really kind of taken a back seat since I've become a family man, which is fine with me. The love's still there, and I still play sometimes. And of course, when it comes to Lucis, like Colton's always. Oh, and those that don't know, Colton, the front man and lead guitar player of the band, is always working on stuff. And of course, he's got Valdrin, his other band. Plug right there. Go check them out. They rule. But yeah, man, I'm just getting back into trying jam newer releases more often, and down the road play some more music and get back to shows when things are more normal. But in the meantime, this podcast is
you mentioned shows. Obviously, Split the Abyss and Lucis Absentia have played a number of shows together. I think Woody even alluded to that earlier. Do you guys have any specific memories of playing together or just shows in the Cincinnati area?
I think Mitch might remember this. I think it was one of the last shows you did with, I think, the first bass player you guys had when you guys first came into the Cincinnati metal scene. It was down, I think, in Lexington, actually. I think it was Al Sidecar.
Dude, yeah, and that's John Ritchie. He was the original bass player that moved out with us. Yeah. Was that the one where it was kind of like, it was really dark in there, and it was kind of like a rundown place? They had some old
I think there was the
arcade
bar
machines
and that space, and there. Then they had the space where the bands played. It was like in a separate building out back, like a bit of a hole in the wall.
Yep, and the band did Last Question play that show?
I think they might have been involved with that. Maybe them and North Fallen, I want to say.
Yeah, that was a good one. I remember that, and I will say the first time that we ever saw Split the Abyss play, we had just moved out to Ohio, and we spent and this was in 2012, the end of 2012. We spent like a year just working factory jobs and like not going out and just practicing all the time. And we weren't really networking at all. And we finally found out about Thompson House, and we're like, oh, Thompson House. We had met Alex Wool, actually, of the old band Endeavor Never Dies. And then he was playing in Gabriel's Hounds at the time, I think. And Gabriel's Hounds had a show at Thompson House for Halloween. So we're like, oh, let's go check it out. And when we showed up and you guys were there, Split the Abyss was playing, because I don't remember what all the outfits were, but I think that maybe Mark had like a wolf mask on. Yeah, and you guys had your banners, and it was pretty thrashy, and we were like, dude, this band's pretty cool. And then I think the first time we played with you was at Boca Billiards with a whole ton of people. Uncured was on that show. Oh man, you would probably remember more than me. I know, because it was like there were like 10 bands or something at that Boca Billiards show.
Yeah, it's one of those shows.
But yeah, that's a couple of those are ones that kind of stand out in my mind, like from the earlier days, because it kind of blends together in that like 24 or the 2015, 2016, because there were just so many at like the backyard or the backstage.
Right. Did we ever play? I think we definitely played together at the backstage.
I would say so. I can't remember specific lineups because it felt like for a while we were playing at least once every other week. weekend down there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw
It
9 out
was,
of
I
10
mean,
of them
it's like
too.
the epitome of overexposure, but it was just like, oh, we get to like play, cool. And there was a cool community, so everybody was always just hanging out. And I feel like we probably played it in those early days, like 9 out of 10 shows with Vermint.
Now, the most recent time you guys would
Good
have played
times.
together would have been the Cincinnati Metal Scene reunion, but in 2019.
That's right.
Uh, That,
That
that
was
was
an
that was a
amazing
great
show.
And
show.
That was a
That was a
then
very
great
Split
hot
show.
the
show
Abyss played the final
in all ways.
Lucis show before Mitch left Ohio, correct? At Northside Tavern for the AVFTI benefit, I believe.
Oh yeah, that was that one. What wasn't the last one though? The one with Condition Critical over at Urban Artifact.
Yeah, both of you guys played that one as well. Yeah, that would have
That's
been in
true.
the winter of 2017.
Yeah,
That is true. That was a good show. I remember being like,
with
was that can't be the one. There was one where Tony had like a cast on his hand.
yeah,
It
that
was
was the
so
one.
funny
That was the one.
because
Yeah,
I was like rusty on guitar, and I remember they were up there playing and shredding and like killing it. And Cody and Colton were like giving me shit, like, how is he doing that with his arm broke, Mitch? Da 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 da. Because I like, dude's a monster player. Like, Tony's amazing. Love that guy. But that was a really good show.
He is.
he does not fit the profile of a heavy metal guitar player. You wouldn't think he plays the type of music he does
No,
by
because he
looking
just
at him.
looks like he's just like a power lifter or bodybuilder, I guess more so, or like a fusion of the two.
If I remember correctly, he was wearing a football jersey on stage that day.
Yeah. No, that band's great. Condition Critical. Anyone that hasn't listened to them, check them out. It's just awesome, straightforward thrash.
If I can get back just to mention, both him and Colton and Carter from Bowden, for that matter, they all had guest appearances on our last record. Uh, Killed it, absolutely killed it. Colton laid down a killer solo, Carter laid down a killer solo, and Tony on the title track, he took that song from like, it was at least it was a good song, made it a fucking great song. Then he was just, and apparently he just like Max was getting on him for like weeks and weeks to finally like get around to doing. He just like listened to the track, just plugged in, and apparently just ripped it in like 2 takes or something like that, from what I understand.
What led to that, Woody? Like, did you guys just like, what was the moment where you're like, hey, we should just get some people to play on our, like, on the track?
We used to be a 4-piece, as you know, with Mark Green on guitar. He usually handled most of the leads. He left the band, I'd say September of 2016, and I just had, for the longest time, I just had this idea, like, what would happen if we just got like a bunch of guys from like around the scene, just had them all drop a lead on a different track on our record. So that's kind of what we did. Max has been working on work. Max is Max will tell you his first forte isn't exactly lead work. He's been working on improving that. So we'll get some guest spots on there. Make it make it kind of interesting. Get our friends on there, or people we like and admire. So we got those guys. We also got Josh Murphy's also on there too from War Curse. He plays the lead there, and we also got Eric from Vermint to lay down some guest vocals too as well. So just a crazy idea with their swing for the fences, go for broke, and it turns out great. Everyone played like they were on one of their own records. So, and I really appreciate that. Everyone did a great job.
Yeah, man, and I think it was all super tasteful too. It wasn't like you guys were trying to have anybody take over the record, but it is really cool to see faces that we know or from bands that have come through Cincinnati, and to have that time on the record is a total head nod, to the networking and to the underground metal scene. Really, I'm the kind of person, I'm a big fan of guest appearances on albums. I think it's kind of underrated, honestly. Um, I always enjoy seeing that, from one band to the other, the respect, given, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. Woody, we were talking about shows, and I just wanted to mention, I think I probably told you before, but the first show that I ever saw in Cincinnati after I moved here was actually a Split the Abyss show. In the upstairs of Southgate House. I think it was Vermint and Bloodgate and Nithing. Or not Nithing. Can't remember who else was playing that show. I know Vermint was playing, and I know Bloodgate was playing because Andrew from Nithing was playing bass, I believe, for Bloodgate at that time. That was a really cool show. That was the first time I saw you play drums, and I'm pretty sure I've still got pictures saved somewhere of you playing drums from that little side stairway entrance to the stage.
It's a good space. It's just a pain in the neck to walk up all those
Yeah, it's
stairs.
good it was a good workout back in the day, but yeah, nowadays I'm thinking my back would I would just not play the show. I would just be like, you know what? I'm sorry, we can't do it.
Uh,
Oh, you have roadies? Okay, well, have them carry all the gear up. Yeah, dude, this is a pain in the butt. And you know what? If we're talking about like our history as musicians, Will's being a little humble over here because this man, a lot of people don't know this, but back in the Missouri days, which we're originally from, whenever it's funny, whenever Cody Colton and I first started playing, we at one point were in this band called The Harrowing, is what we were originally called, playing like metalcore stuff. And Will had a band. And Will started promoting shows there, and that's how we started getting to play shows. And we played a lot of our shows with Will's band, Cancel the Search Party, and we had good times. And he's cut his chops as a producer or a promoter back then. And then he took all those skills and moved to Cincinnati and started killing it. Isn't that right, Will? You remember those days?
Oh yeah, I definitely remember those days, man. I think about them all the time. It's so funny, booking shows, and now I'm booking with Southgate House Revival a lot, and that's such an awesome venue. And I just remember like renting out the basement of the Journal Printing Building for like $400 when we would maybe take $100 revenue through the door. We didn't care. We paid money out of our night jobs just to have a space to throw a show.
Cancel the search party. I like that. I'd wear a shirt that said, I'd wear one of your band shirts, Will.
Dude, you should have seen it. Like, there's probably photos or footage
Yeah,
online of Will killing it. He was a maniac on stage. The dude did vocals, and he was always running around and sweating and ripping his shirt off and doing the whole thing.
it was definitely a lot of fun. I think that for the most part, the guys in that band, we all enjoyed music, but I think that
Absolutely.
a lot of it was kind of the live setting, and that's why we started a band to play shows, because nobody else was really doing that in our hometown. I mean, there's a reason that we were, linking up with the Harrowing guys, from like 35 minutes up the road out in the sticks, because we were pretty much the only two bands from that area playing any kind of heavy music. But people wanted to come, I mean, it's a tiny little town, so obviously it's not like you're getting any real draws, but people had a lot of fun. And, some people that didn't even know, heavy music would come out just because it's a good time. I think that's one thing that's kind of missing, from just live shows in general these days, with metal. I think that because it's such like a niche listener a lot of the time, that you get a lot of people
Yeah,
these
absolutely.
days, especially, that, aren't necessarily into like the social aspect of the music. And I totally get that, man, because I'm not going to a show or I'm not at work, I sit at home. So I totally get that, and people want things to be the way that they were when your casual metal fan was listening to, death metal or whatever, like in the early 90s. It's just not the same. That's not where the party's at. That's not, the thing to be doing anymore. Now the thing to be doing for people
A
in
lot
their
of things have changed.
anywhere from 15 to 30 is going to a club or, being a wook, and going to festivals or, whatever.
There's a lot of factors that go into. You just opened up a big can right there because I agree that we kind of when we were doing those shows back then, but especially you got to think about anybody that was doing it from the 80s into the 90s and early 2000s. Like, the internet was still fresh, there weren't smartphones yet, you didn't have streaming and a lot of the other things as readily accessible as they are now, so there were just kind of like less options. And I'm not for sure, but I would just, it's safe to assume that people were a lot more social back then because of that. Like, you weren't like, you could text and call people, but in general, you're hanging out, you're going to the spot,
Hmm.
especially in like the 80s. I mean, that's why you see all those videos of, I mean, gosh, dude, like Sepultura, Metallica in the 80s, like the shows are freaking packed. People are going insane. And nowadays it's like the first three bands, people are just kind of standing around until they get enough beer in them to like move a little bit because they're comfortable. It is interesting how like the times change, but I mean, there's still people out there that want to come out and do the thing. But yeah, it's just interesting how the live setting changes. But what never changes, I think, is just there's that like palpable energy when you're in a room when everybody's jiving and the band's killing it. That
Absolutely, man. There's
that's why
nothing
metal
like
still
it.
goes. Why
There's
metal's still
absolutely
alive.
nothing like it.
Hmm.
I think honestly that's what's driven me, to do, what I do, with transplant is because I enjoy it. Obviously, like, it's work, and even you don't get to enjoy the shows, especially, the bigger bands that you pull in because there's more risk factors going on with the show, and you've got to be, you know, attentive and taking care of business and everything, so you don't even get to enjoy some of the bands that you bring in as much, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't really enjoy doing it, and I enjoy booking metal that I like, and I think that that's the key to what has helped the mild success of Transplant
Mhm.
Productions in its infancy, you know is because that way it's genuine. If I have to, if I'm booking
Right.
anything that I don't like or something that I don't believe in, then you would probably reflect that in the quality of the show production. And I strive to make every show the best that it can possibly be. So we did a little thing. We're going to kind of change up courses here. We did a little thing to kind of help you guys understand some more of our musical influences. Many of the people that are going to be listening to this off of the rip here for the first episode kind of already know us, or are familiar with the bands Midi and Witch. Yeah, that's your new names, guys.
MIDI and Wood. I love it.
So we
Can can I
so
be MIDI? Can I be MIDI?
you guys can be whatever you want. But I asked the guys to come up with some albums from 2020 that they wanted to mention. We're not like ranking them or anything like that, but just some good albums that they enjoyed that came out last year, and also some albums that have already come out this year, or are coming out later this year. So I had picked more than three for each option, guys, because I'm sure that we will mention at least a couple of the same things. So I'm trying to avoid that. So Woody, why don't you go ahead and give us some albums from 2020 that if we haven't listened to that we should already.
The first record I'm going to talk about here is a band that I got into very recently, actually, last 6 months, I want to say, and they've been active, I'd say, for at least a good decade. This is a band from Sweden. They are currently on Front Frontiers Records. This is Persuader. Last year they dropped late last year they dropped a record called Necromancy. Uh, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of styles. The closest thing I could probably describe them as is power metal, and I'm a little loath to do so because their sound
Interesting.
is very aggressive and they're very dark as well. There's a massive underlying thrash influence to their sound. There's a big underlying thrash influence to their sound, and I'd say their stylings are lean a little more contemporary, so they're not really you're not getting like a Halloween throwback or something like that. Tones very modern, sounds pretty modern, but this record itself is just very dense. It's about, I think, well over 40 minutes, and there's only 7 tracks on this record. So all the songs just pad together. I was going to say what I think what I personally really like about this band, they're fast, thrashy, and their singer Jen Carlson is almost a dead ringer for Hasi Kirsch from Blind Guardian, and they're one of my favorite bands. So that's just an instant plus for me right there. So Persuader, Necromancy, the record they put up before that, The Fiction Maze, just very good, very intense power metal. I'd recommend everybody check out.
I'm on their Wikipedia page here, and I'm loving that one of the two founding members, they don't even know his last name, apparently. It says David, full name unknown, and he left the band months later due to musical differences.
I like the name too. If you want to go thrash, you just pick a word that ends in ER. Persuader. Epic.
Yeah, they've been around since 97.
Damn.
That's definitely a deep cut, Woody. What did you say the name of that album was?
Necromancy.
Very cool, man. Did you want to hit us with another one there?
Okay. This is a band. The next 2 releases I have here, the word I think I'd like to use is consistency. I think this is a band that has been extremely consistent post 2000. They're a band that made their hay back in the 80s. This is a band also I think is a little historically significant too. This is the band that took Metallica out on their first U.S. tour. This is a band that I think is one of the best live bands I've ever seen. Uh, the album is Metal City by Raven, put out on on Steamhammer Records (SPV). I think since 2000 they've maybe put out I want to say 4 records, All for One, Walk Through Fire, Destroy All Monsters, and this. And I'd say all 4 records are really friggin' solid. And this one is notable because it's probably the first lineup change they've had in about, I'd say, 30 years. They replaced their second drummer, Joe Hasselvander, with Mike Heller from Malignancy. So this is an old new wave of British heavy metal band with a tech deaf drummer. And the first impression I got from this record is I noticed that they did not put any limits on his playing ability. He is just he is going out straight ripping like he would be in any other projects. And founded the co-founders, the brothers Mark and John Gallagher. You see these guys live. One of I think a signature thing for their sound is this real just gonzo sense of energy. It translates in their live performances and in their studio recordings, and they are playing like guys a quarter of their age. This studio record. They also in 2019 put out a live album with this new lineup, and this album Metal City. I'll just talk. Basically, it's thrashy, it's catchy, it's sort of straddling this line between like thrash and new wave of British heavy metal. Just top to bottom, just high energy. You wouldn't think a band from a band like this late 40 years into their career by now, I want to say, and they are just still bringing it. I think they're just a great band, deserves much more recognition than they've gotten, and they've been just incredibly consistent like the last 20 years.
Dude, I'm gonna have to check that out because I'm aware of Raven, but I haven't listened to him a lot. But everything you're describing, as a guy who doesn't keep up to date very well at all on I mean really just modern metal releases in general, I kind of just pick and choose like, oh, that sounds cool, I'll check it out. But you've piqued my interest. I'm gonna have to jam this, especially that because I know they've been around a long time. But right on.
And what's your last album from 2020, Woody?
Okay, I'm just it's probably inevitable. If you know me, it's probably inevitable I would have been talking about this band. I am an errant fanboy of this group, and even if maybe this is a great album, even if it probably wasn't as good as it is, I might still be talking about it right now. But when speaking in terms of consistency, this is probably my overall favorite thrash band right here, and I think they've got one of the best back catalogs going right now. Sodom with Genesis 19, also off Steamhammer. This record's a little notable because it's the first one they've had Frank Blackfire back on guitar since I think Agent Orange back in '89. He's got in. They've also got a totally new lineup now. Tom Angel Ripper, I think, is the only been the consistent member throughout their back catalog. They got a new guitar player and they got a new drummer, Tony Merkel. They're a 4-piece now. They've been a 3-piece for about the longest time. But the one before this, Decision Day, I thought that was a good record, and the one before that, Epitome of Torture, I thought was good as well. I think this album, top to bottom, good, just consistent all the way through. I think Sodom, I think they just have this ability to be heavy as any other band out there, but there's this inherent tunefulness to their writing that I also really like Tom Angel Ripper's approach to like lyrics and stuff like that. It's heavy, but it's audible. It's intense, but catchy at the same time. And it's also them kind of like going like over the course of their career since the first In the Sign of Evil EP to like this, they've kind of gone through stages. I mean, the first 2 releases they put out were that's like almost proto black metal in a way. There's a little bit of on that right here, particularly in the track Sodom and Gomorrah. Their third track, Euthanasia, probably like the most Agent Orangey they've probably sounded in the longest time. I think Friendly Fire, the closing track, might be my favorite track on the record. It's just a heavy, catchy song, and I just think the leads are there, the performance is there, the songwriting is there. I just think that I was probably gonna like the record regardless, but I think this just oh man, not only did they meet my expectations, they I'd say went past them, and I'm really interested to see what this lineup's gonna. I hope this lineup stays stable. I really just want to see what they're gonna be putting out in the future. I'd really like to see them live if they ever come to the States.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. Definitely some killer picks, Woody. A lot of thrash metal. I would definitely have expected no less from you, sir. Mitch, do you want to give us some albums from 2020 that we should be checking out?
Yep, and it's going to fit in a similar vein, not as much of the um, kind of like tenured bands that are still killing it, but it's still in the thrash vein because thrash is life, and that's all there is to it. Death metal is great though. We all love death metal and black metal, but my heart lies in the thrash. So I'll start with, and it's funny because I didn't really listen. Again, I don't listen to a ton of music, so I had to kind of look back and be like, okay, what did I listen to last year? And the obvious one, and it's hilarious because it's a band I've been into since 2011. But Silosis put out their first album, and I think it was 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. Their latest album, Cycle of Suffering, which was pretty amazing considering they kind of made a departure of being as riff heavy and thrashy. Okay, so 5 years because Dormant Heart was 2015. Just had to look it up because I'm a poser that didn't know that the album was 2015 and assumed it was 2014. But anyway, yeah, Cycle of Suffering. I was looking forward to it. Thought that Silosis was done because Josh Middleton, the frontman of that band, had joined Architects, and there wasn't a lot of one, Architects is a bigger band, so it was kind of like, oh, he's putting all his efforts there. Silosis is taking a back seat, no big deal. And then blam, it was just like, okay, here's a single, and the album's coming out in a month. I was like, okay, cool. And yeah, it came out, and honestly, their prior release in 2015, Dormant Heart, kind of like anybody that knows them, they were a band that's just kind of like I don't even want to call it modern metalcore, but because that's just not the right word. Metalcore is like your Kill Switch, your As Lay Dying, Unearthed, Parkway Drive, all that stuff. They're just I don't even really know how to describe them. Like kind of modern melodic thrash, something like that. You just have to listen to them. If you know them, booyah. If you haven't listened to them, check them out. But the newest album was great because I know they went from E standard tuning. I think they went to D standard, and it kind of you can kind of tell. But they capped. It was almost like a fusion of everything they had done before. So like you had the little Wheatleys and harmonies and awesome just kind of rhythmic sections from like Conclusion of an Age and their first record, and Edge of the Earth, their second record. But then Monolith, their third record that they put out, had a little bit more of like this gloomy kind of vibe to it with some of the note choices and tempos of the songs and stuff. But I guess I would just say that like I'm a fanboy of Silosis. I wasn't a huge fan of Dormant Heart, even though it's a good record. It just wasn't as thrashy, as aggressive, as heavy. It didn't resonate with me. And so when this came out, 2020, especially with everything that was going on, I guess this was right before COVID hit. Yeah, it's great. Like they released this single I Sever, and it's like classic Silosis. Like it came out and it was like, dude, they're back. This is it. This is awesome. And I could go on and on, but it's a great record. It's worth checking out. If you haven't listened to them, give them a chance.
That's definitely one that I'm going to have to check out.
Have you not listened to it yet, dude?
I have not. I'm familiar with their first two, and then I think I listened to Monolith, although I didn't go extensively into that. But it's funny. You were talking about them stylistically. To me, it's funny because you almost can lump them in with some of that like kind of like groove metalcore kind of stuff, but they're really not that different. Also, from a band say like Revocation.
They're they're a very original band. They have their own kind of sound. I think that like in an interview once after Edge of the Earth came out, Willie Adler, or no, Chris Adler, the drummer for Lamb of God, actually said that they sound. He said something like Death Symbolic and Justice, or Metallica's Injustice for All, like had a baby and like left it in a junkyard or like a trash heap until it like spawned forth and started to feed or something. Like basically just saying they're kind of this cool blending of like the latter eras of Death and Metallica, which I mean, it's actually fairly accurate. If you listen to Edge of the Earth, which is a phenomenal record, it's just like riff laden. I mean, the whole album is just like riff after riff after riff after riff after shred solo after riff. It's awesome. But to me, Cycle of Suffering doesn't quite live up to, and it's probably a little bit of bias just because I spun those older records so many times. It doesn't quite live up to them, but it's still it's so good. It's like right up there with them. So that's my first album. My second one, and it's funny because it's like the polar opposite of Silosis, because it's a band that I've never really been like crazy about. I was kind of underwhelmed by some of their other releases. Not that they were bad, but they just didn't really do anything for me per se. It was kind of like, okay, like this is just it's a thrash record. Warbringer, Weapons of Tomorrow. I think I don't know what it was that caused me to check out the album. It was actually like the beginning of this year, and I don't know if it came on shuffle on YouTube or what happened, but I ended up deciding to listen to the whole record. Maybe it was even just the artwork, or oh, I haven't listened to Warbringer in a while. Let's see what this sounds like. And it's amazing. Like they got a new drummer. I know that's one element that changed because I even went back to listen to because I'm not a big like I don't know I don't know every record super well. I haven't like jammed their discography hardcore, but I knew that I just I've never been a big Warbringer guy. They're a good band. Nothing against them. But I listened to Weapons of Tomorrow, and it was like, dude, like it has everything that you could want and more in a modern thrash of that, like modern thrash record. Because they've got your typical, like they play the thrash stuff, they do the halftime stuff, they do the cool groovy stuff. But then there's even moments on this record where it's like a little bit of black metal creeps in there, like sonically, like the music. Obviously, they're not singing about Satan and stuff, but it's really good. It's got some really strong tracks, and I spun it multiple times after I discovered it. It was kind of like a sleeper. I was like, why has no one talked about this? Am I the only one that like gets it?
I'm interested. Woody, are you familiar with that album?
Yeah. Did you check it out, Woody?
Uh, I kind of dropped off of Warbringer after they dropped their third record, but I remember got a War Without End, Waking the Nightmares, and the third one, World Tunnel Center. I'll say this much about two things about Warbringer. Uh, because of them, I found out about Demolition Hammer, Hellstar, and Sacrifice. So I owe them that. I'll always owe them that. And I think, secondly, John Keeble has got one of the most distinct voices out there. I think his performances are always great. He's a great guy. He's a great vocalist, a great guy to listen to. I think any band would benefit from having his voice on.
Absolutely. I'll say this for that record. It's a record. If you're a fan of Warbringer, listen to it. If you're not a fan of Warbringer, listen to it.
Okay.
Because it sounds different than it really is like an evolution of the band. Because like I said, I went and listened to the prior record. I was like, oh, this is really good. Have I just been sleeping on them? Did I miss something? And I listened to the prior record. Can't remember the name of it. I just know there was like a big temple, probably a tank or something on the cover. I don't remember. I just know that I listened to it and it just wasn't. And dude, the drums were a big element too. I noticed that. I'm like, oh crap! Like the drumming on the new album is just really good. But that's my second. I would advise anyone to listen to it. And then my third for 2020 would be another. They're kind of a lesser known band, and it's another war band. I almost was going to try and find 3 war bands just to kind of do a trifecta of war bands. If War Curse had put out an album, I probably would have picked them. But they're called Warfect, and I believe they're from Sweden, maybe.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think they are from Sweden.
To people that haven't listened to them, it's basically like take the best elements of like the good eras of Sepultura, Metallica, all the good thrash bands, and even like some death thrash, and then just throw John Nudvite of Dissection's vocals over it. Like that's what they are. And it's awesome. It's just really badass, high octane thrash, killer riffs, killer solos. They're a 3-piece. There's only 3 of them. They put out a couple of albums, I think 4 up till now. I haven't listened to the first 2, honestly, that extensively, but the prior record, Scavengers, I think it's called, is also really, really good. So just, I mean, if you're just a fan of riffs and solos and just that old school like late 80s awesome thrash stuff. It's well worth the check out because I'm surprised they're not more well known because they're amazing. It's just good, headbangy, catchy, to the point songs. Um, but yeah, they dropped their new album. I think it was their first one in a while as well. Last year, and yeah, that's kind of a sleeper. Yeah, it's their first one since 2016. So it had been 4 years since Scavenger had come out. So it had been a while. But yeah, they're lesser known. Let's see. Yep, they're Swedish. Been around since the late 2000s. And I'm sure people that know them. But if you haven't checked them out, like that's a band I would just recommend to almost anybody. Like they need the outreach because if you like thrash or if you like dissection or if you like both, check them out because that's exactly what the band is. Just awesome death thrash with dissection vocals. And that record came out and it's awesome. I don't know. I don't really have a lot more to say about it. It rules.
That's one that I am not familiar with, so I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I
Dude,
feel like I've heard the band name before, but I don't know their
yeah,
music.
and
So
it's not like one of those front to back every single track. I'm like, oh my god, but there's enough awesome moments in it where you're just because most of my listening nowadays is kind of like semi-casual listening. It's usually I'm busy, so if I'm doing stuff, I'll put on music, so it's kind of background noise. But then there will be those moments where I'll like stop whatever I'm doing. Oh my god, like this is like whatever's happening is enough to pull me away from whatever I'm doing. This is one of those albums where there's just like a riff will hit or the solo will hit, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? This is amazing. So that's my 3 for 2020, man.
Thanks for sharing, Mitch. I'm going to go ahead and throw some albums out there. I'm not going to go quite as in depth as you guys, probably, but there's a couple that I want to mention. One album that I really enjoyed from last year came out in October on Peaceville Records was Morta Scold's Suffer for Nothing. They're old school death metal from the Milwaukee area. A lot of our listeners are probably familiar with them. They've got a lot of fans down here in the Cincinnati area and in Ohio in general. I personally thought this was one of their best efforts. I think it stands up in their discography. Sometimes I think that old school death metal bands kind of get that rap that, they just kind of put out material at this point because they're trying to cash in on a trend. And I don't think that that's true for Mortis Gold at all. Honestly, I think this album kind of flew under the radar compared to some of the death metal that's coming out these days, and death metal is such a convoluted genre that, almost anything can get lost unless you're Cannibal Corpse, that definitely was I'm definitely partial to death metal quite often, and that was one of my absolute favorite records of the year. So Mortis Gold, Suffer for Nothing. Another big one for me was The Deeds of Flesh that came out in December. First album full length since Lynn Mark's passing. The album is entitled Nucleus. I mean, it sold really well, so a lot of you are probably also familiar with that album as well. But that was definitely a personal favorite for me. It's been played many times since this past December. It came out right at the end of the year. So that's a great one. I'm actually going to go over 3. I'm just going to mention 3 more real quick. They're all local to the Cincinnati area, but they're some of my favorite musical releases, and my friends are in these bands, and I have worked many times with all of them. So definitely got to shout them out. One would be Woody already mentioned Split the Abyss's release, so I'm not going to go into that one. But Ascended Master released their inaugural EP back in August of 2020, What Was and What Shall Be Again. That's got a who's who of Cincinnati metal bands past and present in it, so you should definitely check that out. I think you can find it on Bandcamp and YouTube. Machinations of Fate, self-titled, released through Redefining Darkness Records, and they got distro through Hell's Headbangers as well. That came out in February of 2020. That is, I appreciate that album more every time that I listen to it. We've had over a year to listen to it now because it's already almost May 2021 as we're recording this. But that album has absolutely grown on me since listening to it initially, last winter. It's crazy. It's like melodic, yet technical.
It's so good, man.
Oh, it's just like a breath of fresh air because I love technical music, but it doesn't lose any of like the inspiredness. Sometimes that really technical music kind of like loses that sense, you know. And
No, it's
for me, this
tasteful as
is
heck,
like,
man.
oh, it's so yeah, that's a great word for it, Mitch. Anyways, I don't want to stay too long on one of them. I got one more to mention, and then we're going to talk about 2021 albums. Last but definitely not least, I wanted to mention Valdrin's Effigy of Nightmares that came out in June of 2020, and that's another really, really good one. That's their third release on Blood Harvest Records, I believe, or it could be their second. Either way, that came out. That's their, I believe, third full length, and they have the EP as well. It was super good front to back.
No, dude, yeah, it's great.
Brutal yet eerie, it's got kind of like the creepy horror vibes to it, but it's super heavy and it's super melodic too. That band, all super great players and writers. So
That's kind of the Valdrin way. It's like a soundtrack to an evil castle is just kind of what their stuff sounds like usually. Like it is very soundscapey because of that. The keyboards adds such an awesome dynamic to the music that they create. Yeah, and that release is amazing. I concur. Short but sweet too. So it's like they kind of kept you wanting more at the end of it. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think that's kind of the point with some of their music too. With they've got their mythos, and every release is kind of a step in that. And I think this one was definitely
It's evil, dude.
you know,
Yeah, it's
Oh
evil.
yeah, it's
Just look at the
terrific,
artwork.
and obviously, fans that have owned their other releases or listened to their other releases, may have been interested when they saw a shorter release, but it was definitely not like I'm trying to think of the right word. It definitely wasn't just like a release to be a release, which I think sometimes is the question with short releases like that, especially for a band that puts so much effort into their full lengths.
Oh yeah, I don't. I mean, the music speaks for itself. It's like you would never
Absolutely.
think that it's a cash in. They put so much time and effort into their music. I mean, really, that's kind of a testament to a lot of music that comes out of Cincinnati. I've noticed, like if at least from having moved here in 2012, 2013, like any of the bands that have been around, and there's so many to name. Like I wouldn't even want to begin naming them for fear of like missing out on some of them because there's been so many. But maybe we could do that on a later podcast. But yeah, it's like Cincinnati kind of breeds pretty good metal, and I think that a testament to that too, or a big reason that happens is because of it's almost like everyone rises with as well as all their contemporaries. So when you're surrounded by like you're in a music scene full of supporting and talented and motivated and creative individuals, it's almost like it just kind of infects everyone. Even if you just kind of stay at home and only go out and play shows or go to shows once in a while, there's just kind of this cool little energy. Maybe I'm just being a bit woo woo about it, but that's kind of how I feel when it comes to Cincinnati.
No, not at all, man. I've noticed that in this area too. You've got people from, one band join this other band and, members of that band are in another band, and like you said, the work ethic and musicianship and the pride in the music and everything, that breeds on itself. And especially when you have so many solid band members making bands aside from projects that they have,
Yeah,
that's super encouraging, and it encourages not only it keeps things fresh. And I've really enjoyed some of the recent bands, like Ascended Master, which is such a breath of fresh air. That's not like any band that's around here. It's easy whenever you say, oh, it's Death Thrash. That's such a great band. One thing that's really cool, I might note before we move on to the 2021 albums, I thought it was really cool that you mentioned, people from going out to shows and stuff actually booked a band within the last couple of months. I won't name them, but, have seen the young guys coming out to shows for the last couple of years, and now they've got their own band. They've started a band, and to me, that's like a microcosm of what supporting the heavy metal community and what is good about it is. It's like you've got this awesome music, and then you've got people that it moves in a way that they want to create and help extend that community and that legacy of the music. It's fantastic. I love it.
like the hope is that just never stops happening, right? Like that there's just always young motivated individuals or troubled or whatever it does. I mean, you could any walk of life, people that resonate enough with music but also decide like, you know what, like I want to do this, I want to play it, I want to express myself. Woody, did you have something?
Speaking, I guess for myself personally, every time in this scene when I see other people playing, the way I feel about it is that I see that people I know playing just a very very sophisticated, executing very well in a live environment, and that just rubs off of me. I was saying, oh, gotta bring the A game, gotta put the effort in there. Can't be the one band out of the scene. They're like, now they just kind of we're just they're all right. Don't want that. I remember I know people like in the San Francisco Bay Area, they would talk about sort of like friendly competition existing between band. Everybody wanted to be that band, wanted to be the band that had
Yeah,
the heaviest riff and the fastest tempo, and it's just all that just desire to sort of excel within their own scene. So to me that's how I've always seen it's a good thing when you have that band. So that way it's not like you're if it's just one band and you're the only decent band in a whole city, there's nothing really you can really pull from like that though. But when you're one good band out of several great bands, in a scene, I think it pushes you, do do more because if you slack off, someone else is gonna take your
dude,
spot.
you're absolutely right. And having gotten older, I don't know, and being a little bit more removed from the grind of like constantly practicing, playing, writing, etc. I don't feel that as much. But back in the gigging days, what you're saying resonates with me 1,000%. Like that, and it's like it's more than just like the other bands too. Even it's like, you don't want to like you don't want to show up and perform poorly when people are coming to watch you, whether that's like for their benefit or even for your own. Like, oh, don't want to look like a stooge, like on stage and like play poorly. But then when you've got other like people that you're friends with that are, like you said, showing up and they're playing tight and they're playing awesome and they're doing different things with their music that's inspiring to you. It's awesome. It's like one of the best things ever. That's why Cincinnati is so amazing, because it spawned so much awesome local music, regional, I mean, and beyond, really, because there's like different levels depending on what band you want to focus on. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's awesome.
I mean, the new Split the Abyss album, we mentioned it already, but there's 3 or 4 guest appearances from other, Cincinnati area bands, as well as other guest performances. But I mean, if that doesn't speak to the strength of your scene, I don't know what
Yeah,
does.
that's the cool thing is Cincy. I mean, and I've been removed, but I was around enough and it's still in contact with people to know that like it's never been uh if anything's ever been competitive, it's always more just internal to motivate yourself. It's never been like, I've never really gotten a sense, at least me personally, at least when we were playing out, when Lucis was, that there was like any animosity or anything from other bands. It was always just, you know, everybody coming in and playing shows. And if you were playing early or you were playing late, didn't matter. Whenever you got done, you were headbanging and rocking out to your buddies' bands or the out of town bands that were playing or whatever. It was just a giant celebration of being at a live show and all of that entails, which we already kind of touched on earlier.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna keep us moving, guys, because we're approaching an
Yeah,
hour
yeah, for sure.
for this segment here. But let's talk about briefly some albums that have either already come out this year that you want to talk about real quick, or that are supposed to come out at some point this year. Woody, do you have 3 or so of those for us?
Yes, I do. First one, Will, I think you're partially responsible for me actually getting my hands on this. You posted one of their singles in the Transplant Production Group Facebook page. People might know this band, Asphyx, from the Netherlands. Their new album, I don't think Necrosaurus. I don't really know exactly how they pronounce it, but I've become like in the past few months, I've become just a massive fanboy of these guys. I'll admit I had the first 2 records, The Rack and Last One on Earth, in my collection for the longest time. I gave them a few compulsory spins, but I never really like dived into them so hard. So after I got this album and I was listening to it like front to back and just thinking how good it is, I like went back, listened to those records, and then I got like 3 more of their studio records, and I pretty much loved everything I've heard. This album, it's old old school death metal. What I think their particular signature thing is that they like go will very often go into doom territory, have very like slow monolithic parts of their songs, stuff like that. It's these songs are like all riffs. I don't think they really play leads too often. Uh, these guys are 4-piece. I think this is the second album they've done with this lineup they have right now. Uh, FYI, if you want to get into the history of this band, their personnel changes are like they've had tons of them, tons of them. Apparently, I think there was the original 3 guys, and then there's like been incarnations of this band with like the same original 3 guys, like off and on. Like one guy would lead, the other 2 would still be there. They lead, then another guy would come back. So it's a bit of a headache maybe to go back and find
Yeah,
out.
I'm looking at their former members on Wikipedia here, and it looks like there's 10 of them. And I mean, many of them, it looks like you had like an 88 to 94, and then came back in 95 to 96,
Yeah.
and then 97 to 2000. Yeah, it seems like they've been through a lot of members.
I think '07 was like the big reunion where they came back with Death the Brutal Way, and they've been consistently like putting out stuff ever since then. But yeah, Necro Sadist, I recommend you check this out. I mainly got into them because the vocalist Martin Van Duren, I knew him from them and the guitar player in this band. They had another side project for a little while called Hail of Bullets that I really liked.
Yeah.
I think
Okay. I'm familiar with them.
yeah, Martin Van Duren. I think Martin Van Duren's got a very distinct. He's got this real distinct, raspy voice. I think it's kind of unique for death metal. It's pretty audible. So yeah, Asphyx, Necro Sadist.
Very cool.
That Hail of Bullets drop is just giving me like nostalgic glasses because I remember seeing an album of theirs, and now you've got me wanting to look it up. Where there was like a tank on the cover, and it looked like they kind of had that Japanese flag in the back with the sun.
Oh yeah, yeah. The 3 albums were Of Frost and War, Of Divine Winds, and the Rommel Chronicles. All 3 of them are great.
Yeah, I remember picking it up at FYE because of the cover, and I loved it. I think it was On Divine Winds. Yep, that was it.
Woody, what's another album we should check out this year?
Okay, I stumbled on this band somehow. I think it was in the one of the again on probably think on the Full Terror Assault Facebook page, like fan page right there. Someone posted a link to this band. Pure happenstance. I'm extremely grateful that I did. These guys are from Poland. They're called Chainsword, and I would say that these guys they are very, very, very much death metal in the bolt thrower vein.
Ooh.
This very, very much so. I think what might make them different is that they have slightly more guttural vocals than Bolt Thrower did, but it's very much in that very just groovy, riffy, just relentless style of death metal. I think these guys are friggin' awesome. I just love it. Their band name is a Warhammer 40K reference as well. So basically, you're getting kind of 2 things being satisfied at the same time right here. I just think, yeah, I'm really looking forward to hear more from these guys in the future. I think, yeah, Chainsword. The record is called Blight March.
Cool band name, cool album title. I want to listen to it. Blight March.
Yeah, I'm looking at their Metal Archives page, and it says that their lyrical themes are from World War II.
That's epic.
So I'm pretty being it looks like they're from Warsaw. So that, obviously that's a huge topic for, that area of the world.
World War
and,
II, Warsaw, war.
Especially for something like death metal, which, often goes as the cry of the unheards. Eastern Europe kind of gets forgotten about sometimes, when we focus on the atrocities that happened in World War II. But I'm definitely very interested in looking up this album, Woody, and getting into that and see what that's about.
We got to do a World War II episode sometime. Maybe we'll just like tie in albums to it. But that would be...
I mean, there's a lot of them out there. I'd have to put some research into it.
That's, of course.
All right. Woody, did you have any others that you wanted to shout out real quick?
Yeah, one more. I kind of just been listening to this one a little bit. This is the different style right here. Band name, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Orden Ogan, Ordenoggan. They're a band that's been around for a little bit while too. They've got I think maybe about 5 studio records out right now. They just dropped a new record called Final Days. They're a power metal band, but they a little unique for this one. It seems like every different record has a different like theme, both visually and musically. This one, Final Days, has got a big sci-fi theme. It almost for what I think is that it almost sounds like Meshuggah playing power metal kind of a way. That you've got those very chunky riffs, but you also got massive choruses and you've got big shreddy guitar leads in there too. So it's an interesting combination right there. But the songs are just, I think, are just catchy as all hell. And I remember I got one called Heart of the AI that I just listened to once, then I listened to it again, then I listened to it again, then I listened to it again in my car. I'm just like,
I hear
dang,
the
just
excitement, Woody. You're getting me excited just talking about it. Like, I want to listen to this band.
But yeah, I never really listened to them before. I think there are names I've seen like floating around like here and there. But then I finally sit down and listen to this thing. I just was like, God, it's just very well written and very well executed for what it is, and I think it'd be worth checking out for somebody.
Awesome. Thanks for your recommendations, Woody. As always, you're very thorough, and we appreciate your knowledge. Mitch, do you have some albums for us?
Oh yeah, and I've got more that I'm looking forward to than I've actually listened to this year. The obvious is like, and I don't even need to go that into detail. I'll just drop the big dog, like because everyone's listened to this, and if you haven't yet, just get with the program, right? Like the new Cannibal Corpse record, "Violence Unimagined," which to me, and I've just listened to it in passing numerous times while at work, and it's had the similar fact of just like, oh my god, this is just really, 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 really good death metal, like plain and simple, and enough to where it's interesting because I think if you took Chris Barnes' vocals out of it and had some people listen to it, you might not even be able to like on certain tracks tell that it's Cannibal Corpse, probably because of Rutan being in the mix. But it's just super raw, super clean, super heavy. It's a great record.
I think you're right, Mitch. I mean, they're not rewriting anything with this album, but I don't think that that's what anybody expects from Cannibal Corpse at this point, you know?
It's like, oh, and now I'm spacing on it. There was another band that had done something similar recently where it was just like it wasn't anything new, but you know, we need records like this. Sometimes everybody's busy trying to do their own thing, be original, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if you're Cannibal Corpse, you don't really need to, but sometimes even those older bands are trying to like reinvent themselves.
Dude, sure. And I mean, you see that, because like we said, it's nothing new, but it is fresh in a little bit of a way. I mean, you can tell that Rutan's in that band.
Yeah,
And, for me, it has everything that I want from death metal in it. And even
yeah,
though you can tell it's Cannibal, you can tell it's a little bit different. Like, I think that I told you the other day, that one of my favorite tracks on this was Follow the Blood. And that's not really a very Cannibal Corpsey song. Like, honestly, I think I told you this as well. It kind of sounds a little bit like Bloodbath or something like that.
yeah.
And so for me, that is super cool to see. They're not necessarily being like, well, hey, here's a cookie cutter Cannibal Corpse album.
It feels very inspired. It like you can tell they put a lot of energy into it, and that it definitely wasn't. Not saying that Cannibal Corpse are a band to like phone records in or anything, but it definitely has something special about it. And this is just coming from a guy that was like, oh, the new Cannibal Corpse is out. Let's check it out. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm enjoying this a lot. It's not just like a passing listen. So that's my first.
Woody, have you listened to it?
I have not, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I'll probably get around to checking
Oh,
it out
you'll love it,
eventually.
dude. It's phenomenal. Record 2 would be, let me go back here. Well, actually, I'll just talk about 2 albums that I'm looking forward to. I think they're coming out in like 3 days, maybe. One of them's the new Evil record. I love Evil. I've been a fan of that band from the UK since probably like 2014 or 15. They have 4 records out, and this is the first album since it was 2 brothers that were the guitar players. I believe Matt Drake and Old Drake. And their last record they put out was called Skull, and that was, geez, it was so long ago, maybe 8 years ago, I think is what they keep saying. And they didn't put anything out. Matt left the band because of like he's got a family and he works, and it's just something that like he couldn't do it anymore. Just whatever, because he's going to focus on his family and work, and he can't keep up with the vocals. There's like interviews you can look up of him talking about it, and it's obvious he's like not like stoked about it. But anyway, that happened. Yeah, Skull came out 2013. Awesome record. Though my favorite by them is Five Serpents' Teeth from 2011. It's so good. But their new album, Hell Unleashed, it is 30th of April. It's coming out. They've released a couple of singles, and here's the interesting thing. So, and it's kind of cool. Since Matt left the band, Ol is stepping up. So he was just like the lead guitar player. Old Drake was the lead guitar player. Matt was the frontman guitar player, rhythm guitar player, and now Ol's just stepping into the frontman role, and it's cool because his vocals are a little more like I'm trying to think of like I would think like more German, like the tectonic plate thrash, but it still works because it still sounds like Evil. So that's dropping in 3 days, and I'm super pumped for it. And you should check out the singles if you haven't heard them. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them out now already. Gore is one of them, and I think maybe the title track they released, Hell Unleashed. I'm not sure. I don't have it memorized. I just know that it's really rad. The artwork's sick. I love the band. It's just really good UK thrash. And it's their first album in 8 years. So really looking forward to that one. And then my last that I'm looking forward to also comes out the same day, Gojira. They've got a new album coming out. They've got some singles that have dropped. I dig them. I've been listening to Gojira on and off over the last like 8 years. Didn't really listen to their last album that much, but I love The Way of All Flesh, From Mars to Sirius. And the singles I heard were cool. So I'm really looking forward to what they bring to the table with this one. There was some cool stuff. I think they released a track called Another World. That was their first single. It kind of gave me some From Mars to Sirius vibes, which was really exciting. And then there was a second single that I wasn't as crazy about, but it was good. And then the latest one, actually, there's like there might even be 1 or 2 more that have come out that I haven't listened to yet. But there was one Amazonia that was really awesome. They were doing some cool like tribal percussive stuff that was almost Sepultura-esque, even though they don't really sound like Sepultura. It was a really good song.
I think I actually heard that one. I heard that and one of the other singles. I don't know what they were called. They were playing in the background the other day.
Yeah, dude,
I heard them and I was like, man, this sounds like everything that's good about Gojira.
yeah, they're an amazing band.
They're one of the best live bands that I've ever seen. I've seen them a couple of times, and I'm by no means like I don't own their discography. To be honest, I couldn't tell you the names of half their albums, but I've seen them twice, and I would put both of those performances up there in like my top 10 to 20 live shows that I've ever seen.
I'd believe it.
So they just have killed it both times I've seen them.
Yeah, they're a highly regarded band. I mean, there's a reason why they're one of the big. I mean, they're from France, and like they're huge. They're right up there with the other modern greats. And the new album's called Fortitude. That comes out the same day, so we're talking 3 days from now. Which I guess I'm giving out. Well, we're the 3 days of the day we're recording this. This will come out after they come out, I suppose. So
yes, it will.
Go listen to these albums right now. Evil and Gojira's new record Fortitude. I think Evil's is called Hell Unleashed. So Hell Unleashed and then Gojira's Fortitude. Check them out. I'm looking forward to those. Going to listen to those in 3 days.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate the recommendations. Definitely a couple of things. I know there was an Evil record you sent me a while back to listen to, and I remember enjoying that. So you guys both have definitely provided me with a couple of things here as far as, definitely wrote down a couple of names there. Woody, I'm really excited about listening to that Chainsword. But yeah, I've got a couple albums here. Mitch already mentioned Cannibal Corpse. So pretty much everything else that I'm going to mention is from either Ohio or Kentucky. Inoculation from Cleveland, Ohio, released Celestial Putridity, which is their second album on Maggot Stomp. They just released that, actually. It was within days of when Cannibal Corpse released their
Maggot Stomp. I like that.
Yeah, Maggot Stomp. And they kind of get a reputation as a one-trick pony, but I would encourage anybody to listen to Inoculation. It's one of those, they're like a very technical band. It does not come without fire, if you kind of get what I'm saying there. I was so impressed to see them play. They played here back in April at the Southgate House Revival. And I mean, they're a 3-piece, and I couldn't believe how big their sound was and how complicated the music was for a 3-piece band. So if you have a chance, definitely check them out. That band is not to be slept on the slightest. Celestial Putridity was the name of the album. So because Maggot Stomp got mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and say another album that used maggots, that had an album on Maggot Stomp, and they just released their first record on Century Media, which is Sanguisugabog. They're from Ohio, or based in Ohio. New record was Tortured Hold. That's one that took a while to come out as well, much anticipated. It's just bludgeoning death metal. There's not a whole lot of riffs or anything to it. They did branch out a little bit from their sound in their first release. So I thought that was, a nice step forward, especially with it being their first full length. I haven't seen a band in a while gain as much notoriety off one EP release as that band has. So it's exciting to see a band from Ohio, taking that leap to Century Media. That's where the big boys play. So,
it's true.
That's pretty exciting.
I remember seeing all the hype whenever they were kind of making their rounds. I think there was a show or two. I was still in North Dakota, and I just remember Facebook feed was like, they were all over the place. It was just kind of like out of nowhere. It was a big deal.
For sure. And then just two other albums that I wanted to mention real quickly. One is a band that a lot of people around this area are familiar with, Necro Sadist. I've been talking a lot about them, especially through the Transplant page lately, simply due to the fact that they've been playing some live shows and whatnot. But they came out with Dead Ass Pussy back in January. That's a fun one to say on the air. That one dropped on
Wholesome.
Pathologically Explicit Recordings. So I know that they had also, due to the album art, they had some issues getting that on a label. I know that there was multiple labels they told me that, they heard back from that were like, well, there's
It's 2021. Come on, man.
see, and that's kind of my personal opinion. I
It's
guess
like,
that's
you
what they
kidding
told
me?
those labels.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, it's all been done. Like, Mayhem have albums with actual, like, murder on the cover. So, like, let's get with the times here.
Yeah, well, dicks and corpses apparently is where they draw the line. But yeah,
Fair enough.
Necro
Fair
Sadist, Dead
enough.
Ass Pussy on Pathologically Explicit Recordings. They're mostly based out of Kentucky, but their drummer lives in Ohio, and their full time vocalist lives in Tennessee. So they're from all kind of around the area, but they got deep roots here. They'll be playing some more shows coming up here in the area, so get out and see them. The last album that I wanted to mention is also another band. This one's, I believe, all out of Ohio. A couple members are in the Cincinnati area. This would be Hate Icon. They came out with their inaugural EP. It's not a full-length release, but they came out with that here back in April. Another April release. This one on Lord of the Sick Recordings out of Russia. It's called Submerged in Immoral Effluence, and you can find that for free on Bandcamp. You can purchase a physical. Their album release show is coming up in May, second week of May. They'll be playing with Narcotic Wasteland at the Southgate House Revival. They will have a very limited number of copies of the album for sale at that show. The copies through the record label, I know, have not arrived yet. So they got, I believe it's an issue of 30 copies made by for the band specifically, and those have a different layout than the copies coming from the record label. So if you want a one-of-a-kind release from them, you can come out to the show and grab that. But those were all, bands from the area that released really good records this year, and that I think people should check out, and that you would have probably an opportunity to see at some point in the future, around the area.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're going to call it quits then. We will be back shortly with an interview of Dallas Toler-Wade of Narcotic Wasteland. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to Scream Bloody Podcast. I'm William Feiner, and with me are John Woody Corsini and Mitch Pegg. And here also with us is Dallas Toler-Wade, formerly of the band Nile and currently of the band Narcotic Wasteland. Welcome, Dallas.
Thank you.
Delirium Tremens is the band's most recent record. It came out in 2017 on Megaforce Records and can currently be purchased on narcoticwasteland.com. And you can also check out their inaugural full length, which was self-titled back in 2014. Dallas, what have you been up to since March 2020? What's the last year brought you since, everything that's been going on?
Well, a lot has been going on, but basically, it did change the whole sort of dynamic of everything for, obviously playing live. I just decided to be a recluse, and we've just been, working on new music and writing new stuff this whole time, and for better or worse, hoping that maybe we could go play live one day. Or if not, we're still going to just put out some killer music. And that's kind of what the mindset immediately went to when this whole thing came up. And luckily, I was able to still maintain a pretty decent level of employment with a really good company during all this that didn't really involve, being super social active or anything. I was pretty isolated in the work, and so it did kind of work out in that respect for me and the other guys in the band. But yeah, it was kind of just a unforeseeable thing for everyone, I suppose.
Well, it's good to hear that you've landed on your feet, to the best that you can. And it's good to hear that, writing and whatnot are coming around. Do you care to share anything with us about that, what you're working on currently and what the near future might hold?
Well, I mean, we were going to release an album possibly last year, but we decided to just continue to write and perfect the crafts and everything. So I can safely say that a new album will be out this year, and we'll have plenty of material to pick and choose from to build the album and the story that we want to tell with the album, and have a few extras that are still great songs but may not necessarily fit on this album. It's like we actually have probably enough material for just about two albums at this point.
That's awesome. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. And, I took some guitar lessons last year, and that really helped me dial in a few things that I wanted to dial in. And everybody's just staying forward and staying positive, because even if we are totally locked down, you can't get rid of the metal. There's nothing better to do. And we can be normal jerk offs and just watch TV, or we can pick up that guitar. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. What's the writing like for you guys? Do you record stuff at home and kind of send it back and forth, or how does that whole thing work with the dynamic of Narcotic Wasteland?
That's pretty much what happens. Either me or Chris or Ed will, hey man, I've got this kind of demo thing cooking, you know what I mean? And they'll send it over, or I'll send something over to them, and we just work on it from there. And usually it's fairly complete already. And then it's just a matter of us kind of dialing everything else in. And it's pretty organic in that way. And I enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a lot different from maybe back in the old days when primarily you could just jam with your buddies to write songs, which is, has its own, there's magic that can happen there as well, but it's definitely convenient, especially COVID time. I mean, what better way than just being able to share digitally?
Well, and I would have to say too, that just, just dealing with the fact that, okay, for instance, say you're playing in a band called Nile.
Yeah.
And you need the fastest, best, most blistering goddamn drummer in the world, right?
Yeah.
And he happens to live in Greece.
Sure.
You find and you utilize the technology, and you find ways where you can still work together and put something together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then when you finally do get together, then all this new stuff starts to happen. And so, we use the technology as best we can, but you are correct. Just hashing it out in the band room is one of the best ways to do it. I mean, it really puts people on point, and you get a lot of practice that way instead of just laying it down when you're thinking about it and figuring it out later. You just do it all right there and then. And there's always a cool magic to that that's irreplaceable.
I'm sitting here thinking,
the
though,
spontaneousness of it, or spontaneity. I hate saying that, but that's really what it is. When you're in that environment, you just jam, and hopefully somebody hit the record button on some kind of device and you captured something,
Yeah.
It seems pretty cool, though, because I'm sitting here thinking about, like you said, utilizing the technology at hand. We're able to hear music that we never would have heard if we didn't have the kind of technology that we have now. Musicians that can connect together now never would have been able to, 20, 30 years ago.
Hey man, it's just like my best friend from high school. He lives thousands of miles away from me now. We both moved away from our hometown and all that. But guess what? Almost every weekend when I'm home, we still hop online and play online video games together. See? And it was like we were never apart.
Yeah, it's like you're back in high school sitting on each other's couches playing co-op on something.
Oh yeah, man. Totally. So that same kind of chemistry and vibe, like, especially now with all the just like duo or team deathmatch or whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's that kind of same teamwork vibe where it's like, oh, you got some riffs? Hell yeah, I got some riffs too. Let's check this out, check that out. Let's build something.
Hell yeah.
I know you mentioned that you guys have a lot of songs, an overflowing amount actually, to be able to fit onto one album. Is that a pretty nice problem to have, or is it hard trying to piece together what you want people to hear the first?
Well, I would say that having that problem is interesting for me, because I've done quite a few albums over the years with various projects at this point, even in the early 90s. And it's like the process is always different depending on what you're going for. But at the same time, it's like very much the same process. That's really cool. Let's try this and let's utilize it with that. And, I don't know. It just kind of the process, the more it's different, the more it's the same. But like it is the reason why this is cool, because this is the first time actually for me that there is actual extra material left over, other than maybe just like a few riffs here and there or something that were still not appearing on this album. This is the first time that it's like I personally have like a couple of whole songs that I'm like, well, maybe we'll just let that simmer in the deep fryer for a little bit longer because all this other stuff is really working for this sound, you know?
Yeah,
So that's a new thing. And I hope that ends up being like progress for me.
sure. You said you took some lessons last year? What was the main reason for taking that? Just to get, because obviously you've played for so long. I mean, I've heard plenty of what you've done. You're a phenomenal guitar player. Was it more just to get a couple more tools in your tool belt or make you think outside the box, maybe to kind of like what led you to go down that route?
It could be looked that way. For me, it's like when I wasn't, even when I didn't take lessons, I was still learning new licks. I mean, it's all out there, like on YouTube or whatever. And I was looking a couple of like Rusty Cooley licks or whatever, his Lickopedia, I think they call it. I was checking some of those out. And then I was like, well, you know what I really need to do is get back to the basic and get back to like just the basic 5 Western major scales or whatever, run the circle of fifths and be able to learn how to play all them shapes and all the positions and all that stuff. And but I also learned just some overall technique type stuff, like actual physical stuff with you and the instrument. People do a lot of things that burn up a lot of energy that they don't really need to burn up, and they can achieve the same goal and actually have more attack and more power. So there was a few little things that I wanted to dial in. And my philosophy with being a kind of a, I don't know, overly enthusiastic about music. my approach has always been that the education is also important, and the day I stop learning about it and getting better at the guitar will be the day that there's something going to die inside of me. And I think a lot of guitar players feel that way. It's just like they're maybe already really accomplished at what they're doing, but they're just like, man, I want a little bit more. I'm going to push a little bit harder and practice a little bit more.
That's pretty refreshing to hear, because sometimes you see, especially guys that have been around the block a time or two, get a little bit complacent and try to ride the rock star status. So that's pretty cool to see that you're still trying to get better all the time and implement that in whatever it is that you're writing.
Oh yeah, man. And because we actually have a couple of shows coming up and stuff like that, I've been running the set list at least minimal every other day. And that is actually just doing that on downtime has given me physical gains on the instrument that I'm very happy about.
Yeah, get that stamina up.
Yeah, that's it, man. You got to keep that shit. Because, like, for instance, even if say you're playing in a crazy ass death metal band and the set list is very demanding physically, it's also very awesome music or whatever, and it's cool music, but it's also kind of physically demanding. You're just almost dreading playing that set. You're just like, oh my God, this is about to kick my ass. And like, but once you start doing that a bunch of times, you start to realize it was after about 2 or 3 songs into it, you're like, man, I never knew why I didn't want to do this. It's just like, man, what am I thinking? This is the next level. This is getting yourself to that next level. Just bash that fucking set list. Make your arms burn every time. Thrash your fucking head off. It's the only time you're going to get to do it anyways. So you may as well do it now.
Absolutely.
So you said you've been jamming the set list and everything. How are you feeling about live shows coming around again?
I'm ready, man. I mean, I think a lot of musicians are going to say that because they've probably everybody's probably been, if you're anything like me and you're a musician, then you've probably been jamming out and practicing a little bit more and missing the idea of playing live again. It was one of the things, but I had already put in my mind, it was like, there's always a possibility that this will never happen again. But guess what? I'm going to play metal anyways, because fuck you.
Hell yeah, dude.
I'll sit here in my bedroom and play this shit for myself, by myself, and I'll still just try to increase and get better. But it's always great to get out and meet like-minded people and play music for people. That's also a very awesome thing to do. So I say hold it to the floor and go full tilt. You only get one, man, right?
That's right. What would you say are some of your favorite live performance memories, and what are some live performance memories that you're looking forward to hopefully making in the future?
Oh, it's probably just that moment when you there's that moment on stage where everything's clicking and, everybody at the same moment in the band kind of looks over at each other like, yeah, this is what's up.
Yeah.
I love that moment, and That's happened in very many instances and several bands over the years. And it's just like, oh man, that is where it's at. You just look over, just like, this shit is good.
Yeah, that's like the life's blood of a band, in my opinion. Like writing is cool and creating is cool, and there's a lot of beauty that goes into that. But that live performance, especially because of the connection with the crowd too, right? Like everybody's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this ethereal thing.
Yeah, I'm not really a believer. I'm pretty much a barbarian myself, but there is something magical about that. The excitement, the sort of euphoria that is attached to that sort of thing is extremely exhilarating, and everybody needs it. So ready. Even before all this stuff will happen,
No kidding.
that first intro to a show or whatever, and people are always just super excited about live shows. Anybody that was interested in going to one anyways,
Yeah.
As someone who's an extremely avid showgoer, I was thinking of when you said, you have that moment on stage and you lock in with the band, and I'm sitting here thinking about going to a show, and when you have that moment, like in a show, a similar moment, but experienced in a different way, when the music is just right and there's that moment. Like I've got snapshots in my head from all these different shows when the when the moment hits just right. I think it's cool that we can share in that similar thing, but just through a different lens.
Sure, and I'm sure that stuff translates more than we realize. But that's the moment that I want to keep as constant as possible, and just everybody taking a quick glance at each other on the stage, and just being like, yes, this is it.
Yeah.
We are doing this. It's the best feeling, and especially if everybody's super kosher and really good friends and everything, it's just like the best reward ever. It's like, yes, man, we're doing this.
Is this the longest you've had without playing a live show, like because of COVID? You were always pretty active as far as touring regularly, right?
Yes, I mean, the years that I was in Nile, of course, we had a very extensive tour schedule.
Rigorous, yeah.
Before Nile, we played a lot of shows and stuff too. But I would say that because of just where I grew up and there was nowhere to play and stuff like that, and there was hardly anywhere to even rehearse, like the scene or the place that I grew up in just like completely died for music. And that was one of the reasons why I moved away from there. So it would be pretty close, because I did grow up in a place for a while that there was no place to play a show. They just didn't do that.
Right.
So there was that. But yeah, this would probably be the second longest time I've gone without actually playing a show.
So it's been a while, yeah.
And it's pretty cool, man. Where I live here in Greenville, South Carolina, there's some shows that are happening locally now. I'm probably before we head out, or directly after we do these couple of shows coming up, I'm gonna go check a show, man, because there's a couple of local guys here, and it's more like a rock band type deal. But whatever, man, I'm just ready for a show.
Yeah.
As long as it's not country music, I'll be all right.
I think a lot of people are ready for shows, and people are at varying levels of being ready, whether that be medically ready or whether they're just not worried at all or whatever. I think there's just a big call for it, and you can see it in the local shows that we've been booking here in Cincinnati. Lots of people come out of the woodwork, that may or may not have even been around shows before. And then you've got the tried and true that are ready to go too. But you are missing a lot of people as well that just aren't ready. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And it'll probably continue to be for a bit. But what do you think about these bigger tours starting to get announced? Obviously Deicide is going to be touring, and now, the Megadeth tour that's been going
that
around.
Deicide tour is going to be playing 30 miles up the road from me in Spartanburg, I think, at Ground Zero, which has been a metal staple venue here for decades now. I think it's really cool. I think we definitely need to kind of fire things back up. But as you well know, we've all recently had some serious losses from, COVID.
Yes.
And some near incident, even if, it's like, as we're moving forward, we definitely need to be smart and, remain sanitary and not breathe and sneeze and cough on people and stupid shit like that. Shit that we shouldn't even be doing anyways. You know?
Right.
And I think as long as we're respectful of everyone and realize that, hey, you know, I don't feel sick, but I might be carrying a germ and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So that's, you know, that's my approach going forward too. I'm not going to be stupid about this because I've already had some incidents close to home. The whole thing. I'm almost convinced I had it last March. Fuck, my brother had it. He's getting better. I mean, people around me, people I work with, has gotten it too and been out for 2-3 weeks. Like, this shit's real. And even if it wasn't real, why do you want to play? Don't be a dirty bastard. Like, clean and police your shit, and don't be spreading your germs all over the place. Either way, you should just do that as a common courtesy, you know?
The double-edged sword of giving people self-accountability, right?
I don't know about that. It's just like this should be a wake-up call.
Right.
Some serious shit's going down right now. And one of the reasons why is because people just need to be a little bit more understanding of, you know, the germs or whatever they're exposed to and the stuff that they may be giving to other people.
Right.
Yeah. It's not just about
it didn't even have to be COVID. It could be whatever it is, you know.
Right.
Don't be a filthy bastard. That's probably not the best way to say that, but you know what I'm getting at.
No, I mean, it rings true, man. I think you're absolutely right. It's been pretty, you know, again, because, you know, with the Return to Life shows, everybody has questions about how you're going about it. And I think it's interesting to see, you know, the routings of some of these tours, because obviously certain states, you know, aren't good to book shows in at the moment. And so that obviously makes tour routing a little bit interesting. I was looking at some of those Megadeth dates and some of the jumping around that they're doing and the 2 to 3 days off in between, because they're traveling across 6 states in between dates. And
oh yeah, well, you know, that can happen depending on availability because, well, number one, not everybody is completely open. And in South Carolina, we're kind of open for business, but there still are some restrictions, but not like, say, New Mexico, where lots of restaurants are still closed and stuff like that. And I don't have the wrong or right answer for all that. All that I know is that no matter what is going on in the future, everybody needs to be very vigilant about not spreading germs and also not receiving germs. You know, as long as everybody's smart about it, we should be able to proceed. That's the way I feel about it. But
I think it's pretty cool that, you know, you're willing to put yourself out there, even though, you know, obviously there are reservations that come along with trying to book shows right now, because you have to have some forward movement or everything will just stop. But like you said, you have to be smart about it. So I'm just glad that you're somebody that's willing to kind of put yourself on a limb a little bit.
Well, and you know what? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I probably talked to, you know, the bass player, Chris. Me and him, you know, have a lot of long phone conversations. But I would also say that I don't know. I'm not opposed to wearing a mask on stage, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I sing very loud. I would really hate to contract this, whatever it is, and spit it all over people. That would be fucking terrible. I don't think I would ever live that down. So when I play these shows coming up, you might see me wearing a mask, dude. I don't want to spread that. You know, that was the whole thing about the mask, is people are like, well, that's not going to save you. No, it's not going to save you. The whole point of it was to keep you from spreading it if you had it. That was the thing. It's a fucking spit catcher. It's not going to like cure you or save you from COVID. No, that's not the way it is.
Right.
But is a line of defense from someone transmitting it.
Right.
You know, it ain't going to hurt. Hell, I remember one of my favorite Facebook posts from our bass player, Chris. He was like, I like wearing a mask in public. You know?
I've heard other people say that too. I mean, I wear one for 8 to 10 hours a day, so it can't be that bad.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of a fan because people can't see your mouth, so you just kind of see eyes all the time. So I'm like, all right, I get it's uncomfortable for some people, but, and yeah, no, like, you don't want to wear them all the time, but you just kind of got to accept it. Like, hey, like you said, you're looking out for other people. Like, how much of an inconvenience is it really? I mean, doctors wear them all the time, you know, because they're looking out for other people. It's just something you got to do. And you just accept that, hey, this is for the betterment of other people, and just ride it out and hope that everybody else does the same. And eventually we can get back to not having to wear masks at some point, because everything's died down. But who knows when that'll even be, especially as divided as the country is about everything. It's
Or maybe
unfortunate.
we'll just all start wearing them in public all the time out of simple courtesy for other people. Imagine
would be
that
nice.
fucking shit.
Right, like no COVID at all. It's just, hey, you might sneeze on Dolores over there, and she could go home and get sick.
Exactly.
You know, like you don't know.
As soon as you start speaking, everybody's had that awkward moment where you're speaking to somebody and you see like a huge like stream of spit fly out of your mouth, and you're like, "Oh fuck, I hope that didn't land on his leg."
Sure.
It's like, so that kind of eliminates all that. I don't care either way. I mean, I'm not afraid, but at the same time, it's like I understand that everybody does need to be a little bit more cautious, and I hope this is a big wake up. Be more considerate. Don't spread your germs around other people. Think about that shit. You're not the only person in the universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, wash your hands.
Yeah, don't be a filthy fucker.
Dude, I couldn't tell you how many times at metal shows somebody just takes a piss or whatever and they bounce. And you're like, Jesus Christ, like we were bumping elbows with these people and like touching rails and all kinds of stuff. And I never really thought about it. When COVID first happened, I remember like I was hyper aware myself of like everywhere I went. I was like, oh shit, like I never think about this. Like every doorknob you touch, this, that, and the other. Like, I mean,
my
there's germs on that
son
shit.
was so afraid of germs and stuff like that growing up. I have a funny story. Like one time, all I did was put on the oven clean, right? So the oven would self-clean. He was like, the germs from the oven are burning my eyes. Oh my God. So he was always like, like really weird about germs and shit. You know what? He was totally right.
Yeah.
But anyway, funny side story. But yeah, man, we need to be respectful of each other and not spread germs all over the place. I mean, that's pretty remedial in my opinion. Get your shit together, people.
Amen.
I think there's this kind of like divide, especially within the metal community, on the whole mask thing. And in Cincinnati here, we're seeing it with the whole sitting at shows thing, people feeling like it's unmetal to go to a show where you have to sit during the bands or something like that, or, wearing the mask, is conforming or something. And I think it's a little silly personally that there's no middle ground where you can't be a responsible adult and still.
Hey man, you know what? It's better than nothing. Maybe you don't get to dance around and exchange fluids with other people. Okay, if that's what you're into. I'm not into it. I'm not afraid of it, but I'd rather have that than not any shows at all. You can still fucking stand up and cheer and say fuck yeah, and you can still bang your head. All that mosh pit shit was kind of, I don't know. I like to see rows of people just fucking dancing around and banging their heads or singing the lyrics or whatever, it's like, or not singing the lyrics.
I know for myself that as long as there's musicians playing music, I'll go see it. I understand not everybody experiences music in the same way.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, I missed about 5 years ago on Tuesday nights. I could drive about 4 miles and go see an awesome bluegrass band. You know what I mean? It's like, That's not my kind of music at all, but those motherfuckers can play, son.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, those dudes are ripping. And people love it. And all the people are really nice, and everybody has a few drinks and has a good time. And that's what it's all about, man. Having a good time. It's entertainment.
My dad used to take me when I was a kid to this, it was like a little jazz hall that this guy had set up in his house. And that was probably what spawned the love for live music for me anyways. The youngest that I can remember going to see live music anyways. Just seeing the amazing things, sitting there and being able to watch these people do these things, because it's always a little different. I grew up listening to cassettes, but you listen to somebody play a saxophone on cassette and the sound itself is amazing and emotes these certain things to you, but it's just different when you can see the guy ripping the keys off the thing.
That's exactly how I felt about my first concert, which was Rush. I was already playing drums and into Rush and The Who and Black Sabbath and Uriah Heep and Deep Purple and shit like that, back in the day. And I saw those guys, and I think it was maybe the Power Windows tour I saw them on. I was just blown back, man, because they were so good and so professional, and they sounded so good, played their asses off. And I was like, man, I want to perform. I want to write some killer shit, and I want to perform, or I want to be part of a band, because I was still drumming mostly back then. Like, I had some musical ideas on the keyboard or whatever, but most of the guy was just worshiping Neil Peart. You know?
So your first love was the drums, huh?
Yeah, I started off on the drums and then moved to guitar.
You ever still mess around on the drums?
You know, I have a drum kit in the closet right now. I mean, and when we go on tour, you know, we use it. You know, our current drummer will be using it, and it's actually a legendary. It has some history behind it. Particular drum kit. The drum kit that I own was actually used to record Annihilation of the Wicked.
Ooh.
And it's just a good old Pearl kit. You know, it's nothing special about it, but it's just got, you know, the stars aligned and it's got the right ingredients. And I used it actually on, obviously, the Lecherous Nocturne album that I played drums on. Yeah, it's a really good kit. I need to set it up. And actually, you're going to find this funny, but I've been really jonesing. I fixed the cassette player in my truck, so I've been really jonesing to do a Metallica cover on the drums.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would sit through it. I want to play Eye of the Beholder on drums.
Hey, we'll sit through it.
Oh man, that's a long song. You know? I don't, you know, but it's so much fun, and I just remember when that album came out, and I was just like, I love this song, and that was right there at the transition of, hey, dude, are you going to play guitar? Or are you going to play drums? Yeah.
Since we're talking about drums, do you care to talk to us a little bit about who's going to be playing drums on the upcoming shows, or who you're working with these days on the kit?
Well, because of the pandemic and everything happened, but also before that happened, we had made the decision that the current drummer we had for live wasn't going to work out anymore, and whatever. He's a cool guy, but you know, it just wasn't what we were quite looking for. So on the upcoming shows, we're going to have a man named Joseph Howard, who is absolutely just crushing the material. We've actually rehearsed with him a few times now, and he's really kicking ass. Because of all the stuff going on, we're actually going to have the original drummer on the debut album for the album, Eric Schultek. We're going to be working with him for the album and everything. And that's kind of as far as I can really say right now. That's what's happening. We were happy to work with Eric. Eric is not necessarily able to tour all the time and stuff like that, and I'm totally cool with that. But it was always a pleasure to work with him because he's a creative guy, and you know, he is really he's good at mixing stuff, and he's got a really killer setup. And I don't know, there was a chemistry that we had together on the debut album that is going to be very prominent on this third album, and I'm really enjoying that. And for live, we ended up working with Joseph Howard, and he's been just fucking killing it. Killer drummer. And we will probably, maybe work with him in the future on recordings. It just depends. Like seriously, man, this whole COVID thing, and then like, you know, Narcotic are all original members, and but we've had a couple of drummer things going on, but it's like, man, that shit really fucked everybody up, didn't it? You know?
Yeah. So you mentioned that, you know, obviously you're going back to the original drummer from the original self-titled release. So, you know, you said that you're looking forward to working with him again and whatnot. Is the album going to, is the band's sound going to evolve at all with the recording of the new album?
I think so, because I know for me personally, well, Chris and Ed both are contributing much more material this time, which I have always championed and welcomed to the whole thing. I mean, when this whole thing started, I was just like, all right, I got a couple of trash guys, let's get this thing off the ground. You know, that was my approach to it. And we did that. And now we've got some shit up our sleeves that I'm really proud of and happy of. But also, you know, just for us to have been a band for this amount of time, I mean, Narcotic Wasteland has actually been around since like 2012, 2013. A lot of people forget that how much time it takes to get something going. It's like, it happens all the time with artists. It's like they put out an album, it's brand new material to everybody else, but some of them songs are 2 and 3 years old, maybe even older. This shit takes real time and real dedication and effort and forethought. You can't just start shooting a gun everywhere.
Yeah.
Gotta zoom in on the target and then shoot. And so that all that shit takes time. But now we've I feel like what we're about to put out will be the blend of everything that we've done, but a step up even further. A lot of musical freedom. I feel very free right now, and we all do, and we've got so much material now, and then we're gonna really put something together. Now it's just a matter of putting everything together. So we're right there at it. So yeah, new album this year for sure.
Are you guys going to be working with Megaforce on that, or is that something that you're not really at liberty to discuss at this time?
Yeah, that is. All I'll say is that is a definite possibility. But I haven't even really thought about that because of everything going on.
Sure.
But that's definitely a possibility because they've been really good to us, and we appreciate their support.
Lots of people out there make promises.
Yeah, and I'm here delivering my end. That's all I can do.
Right. Well, Dallas, is there any last words that you care to leave us with? Anything you want to promote or plug here before we get you off the phone?
Well, all I have to say is that thank you very much for your time. I know that I was having some technical issues. I'm kind of an older guy, and I'm kind of new to this whole smartphone thing. And
You're doing great, dude.
I don't know. I've always they've carried me kicking and screaming. Now, when it comes to recording and technology like that, I'm all about that. I don't care about this other shit. But anyways, all that bullshit aside, thanks so much. Anybody who is just an avid rock and roller or metalhead, just thank you. And you are in my thoughts always. I think we all have a common thing with rock and metal and anything from early blues all the way up into the super death metal shit. Thanks for supporting that, and thanks for understanding it.
Well, there you have it, folks. This is Scream Bloody Podcast, Episode 1. I'm Will Feiner with Mitch Pegg and John Woody Corsini, and we've just been speaking with Dallas Toler-Wade of the band Narcotic Wasteland. Thanks for listening.